How's it going, folks? This is Aaron the Pedantic, and this is going to be probably quick, or I'm going to try and make it quick because I don't have a whole lot of time. And there is a good bit of ground to cover, but if there's time at the end, if there are any comments, because I do like to do this live, then I will address them. But first off, the reason that this did not happen last week is because I had an unwelcome visitor. I had these giant ass fans right over there, right next to where my computer table is, because the assholes above me in the apartment above me left their washer line open whenever they moved out, and it leaked down the wall and into my wall and started leaking around everywhere. And people had to come in and, we had to dry all that stuff out. So I had these loud ass fans on the day that we were supposed to play, and the players weren't gonna be able to hear me, so we couldn't play conventionally. Now, lemons into lemonade, right? So where we had left off before with Group B, they were in the middle of Darkshelf Quarry, trying to find what was going on with these strange occurrences in the mine. There's these moaning sounds and this these dwarves that nobody ever sees, and there are people that are going missing, and there was this run-in with some slavers before that they took care of, but it went a little bit too cleanly. And the overlord of the village of Darkshelf, it kind of feels like there might be something up with the guy that's actually running the mine, Whizzlewig. So the main group went ahead and went into the quarry and was approaching from that direction. And I already covered last time what exactly they did. But Whizzlewig, the illusionist, and Almericus, which is a henchman that they recruited, they thought he was a cleric of Heronius, but he's really just a fighter. And I'm not going to correct them on that. I'm going to let them believe what they want to believe, along with some miner recruits that were just looking for a place to mine, bro. And they had lost their jobs at the mine for this reason or that. They were all going with Whizzlewig in order to try and find out what they could at the guardhouse. Whizzlewig went in with a whole bunch of beer, trying to win the hearts and minds of the guards and see what they could tell him. And basically, because he had to leave in the middle of the session the time before, he said, I'm going to leave off with this. We can handle it whenever, wherever, whatever. And then I'll meet up with the rest later. I'll be able to give them some more information. So he had to go for the rest of the session. So at this point, we still hadn't quite resolved what exactly happened there. And I thought, well, if I can't play with the rest of the group, then maybe I'll just handle this stuff by text. And it worked well. I would say. There is always the fact that I worried that some of the tension that should have happened in the moments may not have come across. And what I mean by that is he was probably in the most danger out of everybody, period. And he may not have known that. I'm not sure if he actually knew that, but basically he went into this guardhouse with just him and Almericus and, yes, a few little peasants with pickaxes. They went in unarmed, if I remember correctly. It's been a little bit, but yeah, I do believe they went in unarmed, and they went in with just a bunch of beer. And they were trying to figure out what's going on. Well, he didn't know at this point exactly what the deal was with these people, if they're in on what's going on, if they're dangerous, if they would harm them. He just knew that, hey, they probably know something about what's going on, and I'm going to try and find it out. Well, let's just say this. He didn't get a whole lot from the guards themselves. He got a little bit of information, getting them nice and boozed up. But he very, very keenly decided to try and press into this idea of maybe I can strike some kind of business bargain with the people in charge here. And then if I can do that, then there's some way I can extract more information from them, or at least get, a proper look at what's going on in the mine under false pretenses or that kind of thing. And I'm not sure if the player was just personally deciding not to metagame too much, because he should have probably known that they discovered goblins in this quarry. So clearly there's something up, and I'm not sure if he didn't know that because he wasn't paying attention whenever that stuff happened, or if he was just being a good player and saying, well, even though that is the case, my character doesn't know that. Therefore, I'm going to pretend that I don't know that. I'm not sure which way he goes on that. Maybe he can clarify. But in any case, he was in immense danger because then he starts talking to Glurthiel, the elf who is basically second in command to Basili, and is trying to strike up a deal with her about this fictitious cousin of his who is wanting to set up a business arrangement and possibly fund some new mining escapades. And he makes some comments in there that I was like, oh shit. Because, and I guess at this point, yeah, mm, I have to be careful because I know some of the players are going to watch this stuff, but we'll just say that some of he had to really be careful about the stuff that he was saying, because it was very possible that this poor little gnome was going to end up in a ditch somewhere, roll up a new character. We'll just say that much. Vastly outnumbered, outclassed, but at the same time, he played it like an expert. He managed to learn some more about what was going on kind of in the wider world, which I didn't really give them a whole lot of that information up front. I like for them to learn as they play, like what's going on in the world scale. You know, they can ask the questions and stuff like that. But basically what he learned is that they have pretty strenuous taxation in Nyrond, which is, you know, the country that they're in, because of the fact that Nyrond is currently fighting against the forces of Ayuz to the north, and that is taking up just about everything that they have. So it really doesn't leave a whole lot of room for this overlord to negotiate for someone to, you know, fund a private business venture and that not be heavily taxed. Because of that, you know, Glurthiel was basically trying to probe, hey, are you wanting to do this on the books or off the books, basically? And Whizzlewig was just kind of like, well, you know, I'm trying to see what we have available. You know, can I get a an opportunity to just see what your operation looks like from the inside? So he negotiated his way into getting a private tour, a guided tour, you know, because he's not going to be allowed to go into very particular sections unless he's a trusted individual. And he's basically told there could be opportunities for better business ventures if we find that you're a trustworthy person. And, you know, that's something that's vague enough that you could say, well, business people want to see how trustworthy they are, but criminals want to see how trustworthy you are. Which side of this does Glurthiel fall on? And, you know, Whizzlewig was clever, even though he did say quite directly, whenever Glurthiel was just kind of probing, saying, yeah, we've had some interesting occurrences lately because of some slavers doing things. And to which he basically said, those bastard slavers, or something equivalent. And I was like, ooh. But in any case, he was offered an escort home because it was dark at that point. You know, he decided he didn't want to stay in the barracks, which, you know, that would have been easy for him, but potentially dangerous, you know, just depending. Plus, he wouldn't have been able to rejoin the group. At that point, he decided he wanted to try and rejoin the rest of the group. And because of that, he needed to leave that evening. Because by the time, you know, the morning comes, who knows what they would have already accomplished. He would have had to miss the next session, basically, because he wouldn't have been able to cooperate in the you know, the delve. But in any case, what he did is he decided, no, I'm going to leave tonight. She offered an escort, but he had lied to them about where he was camping, and accepting the escort might make that happen. It might make them realize that he's being deceptive. So he says, nah, I got this. It's fine. So with him leaving without the escort, it also makes things kind of dangerous. He now has some wilderness area to travel. Not a whole lot. It's not really a great distance from the guardhouse to the well, where they had taken the well as a secret entrance into the quarry. And he knew that, but at the same time, it wasn't so insignificant that there shouldn't be any random checks. Normally, it was a 1 in 6, and I had to ask myself, do I want to use that exact standard in this situation? And so then, you know, there's the question of, am I taking it easy on him if I lessen it? Am I, you know, and really, you could look at it that way. But really what I was thinking was they're traveling more lightly. It is nighttime. These are people that don't really need torches necessarily. Almericus did, but it was also, the moon was, they had moonlight going on. All things considered, I felt that it was worth basically a reduced chance of a random encounter on the outside. So it didn't happen. Basically, I rolled for it. It didn't happen. And if it did happen, my thoughts were kind of similar to that. They're a smaller party. Maybe they would be able to get by with an increased chance of surprise, but it still wouldn't be too terribly much to help them, because just with the two of them at this point, since they sent the other ones back to the camp, it was going to be pretty hairy for them if they encountered anybody. But anyway, so he makes it back to the well. He descends down the rope, and again at this point, the rest of the group is waiting. This is whenever we actually start the session. The rest of the group is waiting. And then I have to ask myself, how do I want the process of him catching up with the rest of the group to transpire? Am I going to have him do all kinds of tracking rolls or that kind of thing? Or am I going to have him go through an entire process of just him by himself, going through this area that he doesn't know what exact path they went? How would he know? And to that, I was like, well, they are using torches. Torches do produce ashes and things like that as they're in use. And so he would be able to follow the ashes more or less. And eventually, following the ashes, he would be able to follow the blood, because they killed a fuck ton of goblins last time. They killed, I think it was 14 goblins the session before. And they were dragging bodies, more or less. They were carrying them. But let's be clear, they are going to spill blood as they go along. I mean, at some point, they're going to run out of blood, sure. But he was able to follow that path. And again, I'm still rolling for random checks to see if he and Almericus encounter anybody. At that point, it would be probably a lot more handleable, I guess, because then it would have been just, are you bumping into a group of goblins? Even I say that, but Whizzlewig is just a level 2 illusionist, and Almericus is just a level 1 fighter. So coming up against 4 goblins, that could be death for both of them. But luck was on their side. Nothing came up. So they're able to rejoin the rest of the group. Well, the rest of the group had just killed some clerics. They had just laid to rest their friend. I was going to say Jake, but that's the player's name. Richter, who fell in the previous fight up against the clerics and the mud tigers. So they had just finished that battle where one of the clerics had been trying to retreat and led them back to his chambers. And there's really no point in me not sharing this now, because it absolutely has no bearing on anything. But basically, he was running for a secret door that never got discovered and doesn't lead to anywhere particular, except for just kind of a roundabout way of, circumventing everybody. He was running for that, but he didn't quite get away. They ran him down, killed him in his quarters. They searched the quarters, and they found some keys that opened up some footlockers that they found, and they found some good ass treasure, platinum pieces, gold pieces, some silver unholy symbols, really, that are again to this strange eyeball pyramid deity that they really don't know much about yet. They just know that there's a definite connection between that and this relic that they've been sent to try and find somewhere. So far, they still have not found it, but there's still a lot of ground to cover. And there's the question of, will they cover that ground? But in any case, now that they all were met up together, the druid Sifil decided to use speak with animals in order to talk to his wolf that he had charmed the day before. Well, it was the same day, actually. He had charmed this alpha wolf, and he was communicating with it and asking it, hey, can you sniff these clerics and then sniff these quarters and make sure that they are the ones that were sleeping here, which was clever, because honestly, there could very well have been some more clerics lurking around that they weren't aware of. And they would probably want to be a little bit more thorough with them, or at least know if there's a chance they're going to get snuck up on. So the wolf did that and found basically, no, those seem to be the right guys. So After that, they continued their search. They were sneaking around. Finn, the halfling thief, was leading the charge. He was scouting ahead and using his talents in order to sneak up on a lone goblin miner, which he very quickly put to the sword. And then he kind of went off behind another one. And unfortunately, that assassination, it wasn't an assassination attempt. I got to be specific. That backstab attempt failed quite miserably, if I remember correctly. It was a very low roll. And in any case, the goblin just basically made a noise. And because of that, some of the other goblins were alerted. So we're into initiative. That goblin is very quickly killed, but then there's the question of what about these other goblins? So Whizzlewig casts Change Self. I believe it was Change Self, which has a 1 segment time. So it's just like that. Very, very, very fast, which with the way that the timing worked out, this combined with the fact that 2 of the guys had also taken the cleric robes and put them on. Now they look like they belong to that cleric order that seems to be working with the goblins. And now you have Whizzlewig turning himself into a goblin and speaking goblin to these goblins that approach. He basically says, get back to work in his gruffest goblin voice. To which they had to do a reaction roll and see what kind of thing that they're looking at, and it was pretty favorable, especially with these particular circumstances. They see these rather impressive looking individuals, these people that are dressed in the right clothes. Not really sure who the others are, but they seem like they're supposed to be here. And then you see a big goblin who speaks goblin. So yeah, that works 100%. And I loved that that's how this transpired. So the goblins are like, okay, sorry. They go off back to where they were working. And since the spell lasts for rounds, but rounds in first edition are minutes, then Whizzlewig still had a little bit of time to burn as a goblin. So he goes over and he starts speaking with this goblin. He gives him a little gift and says, oh, you're doing such a good job, little buddy. Then he starts kind of grilling him for information. And he finds out that the prisoners are being kept not very far away. And he gets just kind of like, oh, you go this way and that way. And then next thing you know, there's the bugbear beyond the door. And he's, that kind of thing. So useful information. They may have been fine without that information, but they wouldn't have found the prisoners quite as quickly, I don't think, because there's a good chance that they would have kind of gone deeper. Instead, they were still on that level. They backtracked a little bit. They decided to toss a lot of these dead goblin bodies down this trash chute that they found, and they find this big iron gate that's blocking their path. That they assume to be basically the prison. They assume it correctly. So they approach that and they see a little glimpse of light for a moment. And what they don't know is that there's a bugbear that is, well, they did know that the bugbear was there, thanks to their grilling of the information. They may not have known that otherwise, but there's a bugbear hiding around the corner with a mirror, basically just using that in order to keep an eye on who's out there, just in case, something goes on. And then that way he can attack them if necessary, or he can, call for reinforcements or whatever the situation dictates. But in this case, you had these people again dressed up like these clerics. You didn't have the goblin anymore, but the cleric ones were the ones taking charge. And then one of them, also speaking goblin, is able to ask them to open the door, basically, and says, we have a prisoner. They grab Whizzlewig, the illusionist gnome, who was not very keen on being used as a Wookiee prisoner style situation. But he, for the team, he took one for the team. And he was being held aloft as, hey, we've got this prisoner here we're wanting to turn in. And so the bugbear, he basically says, this is quite an escort for this little guy, and they're like, oh, he's very dangerous. And he's like, okay, whatever. So he starts opening the door, and then Audric, who again is dressed up like one of the oppositional clerics, charges. And then I had the great opportunity to use the overbearing rules. Yes, I used the overbearing rules that everybody hates so much, right? The overbearing, pummeling, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll admit there's something else. But in this case, it actually turned out to be pretty cool. So he was wanting to push him back. And I was like, okay, that's overbearing, right? Well, actually, overbearing is knocking them prone. But, the differences semantically can be kind of argued away. So, I compared their strength and their height and all that kind of stuff, and had him roll a percentile. He rolled high enough to basically knock him to his knees and cause damage. And this was a cool resolution mechanic. I think it was actually pretty interesting, and it makes me a little bit more keen to want to use it in the future. Even though it is weird, because we're used to doing the attack roll and then the damage roll and that kind of stuff, rather than using this weird chart. Or it's not even a chart, it's just a table of results. And so we did that, and instead of him being knocked to his knees, because that's not what Audric was trying to do, I ruled that he was able to push him backwards. So it pushed him out of the way, so they were able to force their way in through the door, and battle commenced. So we had Glyphdan charge. We had some projectiles being thrown, and the battle was commencing. The wolf managed to get a good bite on this dude, but then as he had sunk his teeth into the bugbear kind of recoiled back with his large morning star, then just bashed the poor wolf's brains in. Unfortunately, bugbears are tough. They're not to be underestimated, and neither are morning stars, unfortunately. So he's also calling for help, and reinforcement, singular, is on the way, coming from the north. And so, actually, no, that wasn't from the north. That was from the east. I do need to get that right. So reinforcement was coming from the east. And he is, so then at that point, I can't remember who else managed to lay a hit. I think it was Audric, but no, it wasn't Audric. It was somebody else. Somebody else was able to land a really substantial hit on this guy. And then it was kind of comically one of Whizzlewig's darts that manages to be the final point of damage. I think he did 2 points, and I think that's all that was left. He's just sitting there throwing darts left and right, because you can throw those things like crazy, and it just happened to be one of those that was the deciding blow, which is it's just comical to describe. You're fighting this giant creature, and it's just like it's not even poisoned or anything. He's just dead, though. But in any case, the bugbear fell. The second one charges in, throws a spear at Craven, who is charging in his direction with a big-ass two-handed sword. And Craven manages to cut him down in one strike after dodging the spear, which was epic, because all Craven has done thus far is live up to his name and basically stay in the back. Which it's been a gag that people seem to be okay with so far. I mean, anytime that there is a random encounter, I don't automatically put them at the front. I will often do a random check to see which direction they come from. So you're really just as likely to be attacked from the front or the back, and then sometimes from the sides as well. So you're not really safe by just being in the back. And he may not know that yet with me, but that is how I do it. How am I doing on time? I have 8 minutes. Okay, so he comes up and he charges, he cuts the dude down. It was pretty epic. Those fucking two-handed swords against large creatures. Ooh. 3d6 damage. 3d6, and he rolled very well. Okay, so after he was dead, they discovered there were 27 whole ass prisoners in this place, all a mixture of men and women aged between 12 and 20. And they started freeing them. And they managed to find Kwon as the 28th. And Kwon basically told them he was in pretty good shape. And these prisoners overall were in relatively decent shape. They're a little hungry, a little cold. And the group was kind enough to give them some food, some water, to give them some blankets and things like that. There were some rugs that they found and stuff like that. So they made them more comfortable. They also gave weapons to all the ones that seemed capable of wielding them. And, so they did very well by them. Kwon basically said that he's been able to get himself free of his manacles, was able to get around the place a little bit, but wasn't able to get himself out of the place entirely yet. And so he was just playing it very cautiously for the moment. But he was pretty damn certain that this slaving operation here, which he was basically confirming this is part of the slaving operation, is just the tip of the iceberg, and that there are many other places probably that are part of this operation that need to be investigated. So the party at this point said, you know what? We've used up most of our spells aside from some healing. We are, we're a little bit wounded. We've done a lot of fighting. I think we've found the guy that we're looking for. We've saving a lot of slaves. Let's get the hell out of here. And then we can regroup and then, find out what we want to do after that. Plus they found some treasure, and treasure equals XP, right? So at that point, they decide to hightail it out of the place back the way that they came. I rolled random checks, as I am wont to do. And, thinking back on it, I should have probably escalated the opportunity for random encounters, because of the fact that there were now a whole ton of them. But at the moment, I didn't think about it. So it was still a 1 in 6, and that's my bad. But in any case, they didn't come up with any random encounters until, of course, the last exact minute, whenever they were about to get back to Darkshelf. They were an hour away from Darkshelf, the city, safety, basically. And they encounter a patrol of 5 men on horseback. And the men basically are kind of confident that they can bully these people. So they march their way up. They ride their way up to the group and basically say, these people don't belong to you. I did a reaction roll to see what kind of mood they were in, and it was very unfavorable. But, however, there were a lot more people on the other side, and that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. So, it was very interesting, because Audric, the cleric of Cuthbert, was like, you know what? Bam! He just walks up to this guy and decides, screw that, I'm going to break this dude's leg. And wouldn't you know it, he did an attack roll, and it was, he sure as hell did break the dude's leg and basically rendered him unconscious. So that's 1 out of 5 down. At that point, I'm rolling for morale to see what they're looking at, and 2 of them instantly surrendered. One of them decided to retreat, and the last one was still wanting to fight. Well, he did not last very long. He was cut down very quickly, and then the last one was rendered unconscious pretty quickly as well. So at that point, they all surrendered or were killed or knocked out. They were dragged back to the city. The freed slaves were taken to Warder, the cleric of Ula in Darkshelf, who was very happy to give these people some shelter and everything that they need. And then they took these guards and Kwon back to Nestor, the overlord, who basically gave them the reward that they earned, and is funding, in a way, is going to be funding for them to get some rest and then go back in there and deliver justice to Basili and Glurthiel and all of the others that are contributing to this slavery scheme. So it was a very productive session. It was very fun. It was a great time. The time just flew by, and I didn't stumble on the initiative nearly as much. So maybe we're going to be able to keep it. But we'll see. I haven't given up on first edition initiative yet. Most people are not having the to hit adjustment. So we're going to see if there's anything else that we might try. Okay, so we do have some comments, and I'm going to go through them super fast because I only have 2 minutes. Mark says D&D darts are pretty big. I don't think it's that weird or funny to have them be effective weapons even against a larger foe. David and Goliath is an iconic piece of myth for a reason. Yeah, I usually can accept the sling much faster than I can the darts, but you've got a point. Got a point. They are supposed to be pretty big, but it just makes it even funnier that you've got this little gnome, just throwing all these darts. Violet says, yeah, I always imagine the darts as the ancient Roman plumbatas is what I wanted to say. The weight doesn't match though. Okay, so we have some discrepancies about whether or not the weight accounts for them being large darts or not. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I'm sorry I have to just ditch right now, but I got to get back to work. And yeah, it was a great session. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next, but we'll be going back to the group in Hamlet next week. So I will catch y'all next week. Peace out.